Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Ask SENSS webinar focusing on the collaborative project competition. I am Fragkiskos Filippaios. I'm a professor of international business at the University of Essex and the South and East Network for Social Sciences Director. This webinar will focus specifically on the collaborative projects competition, and the aim is for me to give you some information on this competition, which closes on the 16th of February. So we've got just over a week, but also provide you with the opportunity to ask any relevant questions you might have on this competition. And for this purpose, I would like to invite you to use the question and answers box on Zoom. And what will happen is from time to time, I will be stopping my presentation and the slide flow. I will be picking up those questions and responding to them live. We have, of course, a full website with plenty of frequently asked questions populated already. So your question might already be answered those, and I would invite you to go through the website. And also, on that website, you will find the recording of the previous webinar I gave on this competition, as well as the recording of this webinar. So I will be recording the webinar and we'll be posting that recording on the website shortly after. Usually it takes about a day, on the collaborative project competition mini website we have on the SENSS website. So feel free to put your questions on the Q&A, and I will be picking them up from there. I will be reading the question for the purposes of the recording, and I will try to provide as comprehensive answers as possible. Now, without any further ado, what I'm going to be covering today is, first of all, give you a bit of overview around SENSS, who we are, what we do, and what is this competition about. I will also give you a few examples from previous collaborative project competition applicants. We have the information on all of them on the website. I do that because I think it's always, aspirational to look at what others have achieved and what kind of profiles they have. I'll then say a few words about this year's projects that we advertised, and I'll just give you 3 examples of projects that we particularly invite applications at the moment. And then I'll say a few words about how we evaluate those applications and what are the next steps for the next few weeks after the submission deadline. So making sense of SENSS, first of all, who we are and what we do. The South and East Network for Social Sciences. We are what we call a doctoral training partnership. That means that we receive funding from UKRI, which is the umbrella organization, through the Economic and Social Research Council. There are 7 research councils within UKRI, and the Economic and Social Research Council focuses on economic and social sciences type of research projects. There are another 14 like us across the UK, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, all the nations are covered. Not all doctoral training partnerships offer collaborative projects. Some of them they do, some of them they don't. We consider ourselves being one of the pioneers in this area, where we design projects directly relevant to practice. And that's one of the key kind of issues that separates this competition from every other competition. The projects that we are advertising have been co-designed between an academic partner, usually the supervisor, and a collaborative partner, which is a non-higher education institution, and that can be the government, a third sector, a charity, or actually a business organization. What we do is we receive funding, and using this funding from UKRI, we award managed studentships and postdoctoral fellowships. So we've got several competitions over the year, and this is one of the competitions that focuses on the collaborative projects. Overall, the landscape covers about 500 postgraduate studentships across the network of 15. In our case, we were able to award just over 40 in 2024 and 2023. So at the moment, we're looking at the cohort that you will be joining, which is probably just over 80 plus this year's competition, we should be able to award another 40 studentships. That includes, of course, the 8 projects that I will be talking about later. And therefore, there is a quite big cohort of colleagues, of people, doctoral researchers that conduct research in variety of frameworks, contexts, and we try to bring you all together from time to time to kind of facilitate discussions. We have 8 partners, higher education institutions, and you will see that some of the projects are hosted by one of those partners. There are multiple projects hosted by one partner, like University of East Anglia. Essex is the coordinating institution, and then we've got institutions like Goldsmith, City, Lincoln, Cranfield, Middlesex, and Roehampton. Now, not all of those partners are represented in the collaborative project competition, and the reason for that is that this is a 2-stage competition process. So over the summer, we have a call for supervisor-led projects. Supervisors work with a collaborative partner. They submit applications, and then a panel that I usually chair meets to discuss those applications. This year, we received 27 applications. And out of those 27 applications, we have shortlisted and advertised for 8. So those are the top 8 proposals from supervisors. So occasionally, some institutions tend to have 1 or 2 collaborative projects, or other institutions might have none in a particular year. But over the years, all institutions take part in this competition. What do we offer? So once you are successful, what you will be getting? First of all, we offer a very well-developed doctoral training proposition, access to things like the SENSS campus through our virtual learning environment, access to specialist training that is being developed by colleagues across the 8 institutions, access to specialist training and advanced training. We have a competition that just closed a couple of days ago, where we ask colleagues, academics, students from doctoral researchers from the partners to provide us with proposals about specialist training. And we had 4 of those workshops being funded. Quite a lot of online training. You have access to the training offered by all 8 institutions, several external organizations that we collaborate with, like the Parliamentary Office for Science and Technology, that offers a number of placements. And then, should you be successful, you can apply for additional funding, like overseas visits, visiting another institution, field work, and you will have a ring-fenced kind of budget of about £3,500 throughout the duration of your studies, to select and attend conferences, other events, engage with academic publishing, and all that is under the umbrella of our virtual learning environment. So one of the things we do is we look at the PhD not simply as an academic qualification, but as an opportunity for you to develop crucial employability skills. And what we do is, throughout the 3.5 to 4.5 years that you will be spending with us, we try to create all these opportunities available, and we give you the opportunity to select the training that you feel is relevant for you. And obviously, we appreciate that different projects might also offer different training. So all collaborative projects that you will be we are advertising right now have not only the academic side of training, but the collaborative partner in each and every case has committed themselves to providing training relevant to that organization. So a very, very good opportunity for you to expose yourselves in a non-academic environment and learn those crucial skills around impact, engagement, dissemination of your research. Now, all our projects are structured around the 6 thematic panels that we have. Those thematic panels are of equal importance for SENSS. It's just a way of organizing, the submission of proposals. Each of the projects we are advertising this year is actually aligned with one of the thematic panels, I would invite you to visit the website. We have micro web pages for each of those thematic panels that give you a description around what the theme is looking for, what are the key questions, and they all reflect the strengths of the 8 collaborative partners, as well as 2 more things. First of all, the funder priorities. So they're all aligned with some form of ESRC priorities, as well as they're all aligned with sustainable development goals. So when we were developing these 6 thematic panels, we were looking at what are the priorities that the ESRC wants to address, what are the sustainable development goals, what are the strengths of the partners, and this is an amalgamation of those 3 things. Summarized in themes like sustainability and climate emergency, and there are several projects this year advertised in that theme: health, well-being and social care, justice, institution and social change, resolving uncertainty and addressing crisis, digital social sciences, and of course, a thematic area which focuses on advanced methods in social economic research, trying to develop methodological innovations for social sciences. What best way to motivate people by showcasing a few of our current collaborative projects? And you will see from the pictures, you will see from the profile of people and the profile of institutions that we have a variety of people with variety of backgrounds, lived experiences, professional experiences. I usually get this question, is this competition open to mature students? And the answer is yes, definitely. We have had cases, for example, in the past where doctoral researchers have come from, let's say, a consultancy background, and they want to formulate, they want to kind of develop those crucial academic skills. We've put them in a collaborative project that would give them that opportunity. So just Jonathan, for example, here is one of those cases. Jonathan has come with a significant consultancy experience in evaluation of proposals projects. He's currently doing a project in the University of East Anglia with the Cabinet Evaluation Service, and the title is Understanding the Use of Evidence in Civil Service Policymaking. So he's trying to understand how policymaking in the civil service is being influenced by evidence presented by several stakeholders. Deborah and Mason are both based at Cranfield University. They both have actually a very interesting video on their profile. So if they talk live for their projects, and both projects are within our sustainability and climate emergency theme. Mason is looking at determining the potential of hydrogen towns. We talk about hydrogen as an alternative source of energy. Equally, there are significant safety and security concerns. So what Mason is doing is looking at, changing people's behavior and what we can actually do to convince people to the use of hydrogen as an alternative clean energy. And Deborah is doing a project with Scottish Water on a community-based co-design of small-scale wastewater systems, looking at, how can we actually design wastewater systems together with communities to better fit their needs and better preserve the environment. And as I said, you can actually see here the first project that Natasha is doing is an international project. We have several of those this year as well advertised. And the project is with a Brazilian organization calling Warming the Heart, identifying how transforming tropical fire discourses can contribute towards more effective and equitable governance. So it has an element of field work. Emma is doing a project around flood resilience, again, a policy-driven proposal together with an organization called FloodRe. Saul is doing almost the other side of the spectrum, less science-related, but more creative-related and educational project, Creativity, Curiosity, and Professional Artists in Schools. And I could go on, talking about those different proposals, those different projects, you will see that we have, projects related to education, projects related to creative industries, obviously projects related to sustainability, climate emergency, like the one at the University of East Anglia with Jingqing Zhang, looking at the sustainability and resilience of the UK fishing fleet. Things like Gina Khan on health, well-being, and social care, where we're looking at how mothers moderate the impact of intimate partner violence on children's cognitive development. Again, an international project taking place at the Dominican Republic. We have, as I said, several of those this year. So you can actually see there is a very big diversity. What I would suggest is each of those projects have additional information on the website. You could go and look at that, the information we have on the website, but you could see the big diversity of people that come through, ethnic diversity, age diversity, gender diversity, professional life diversity. You could see all those different students, doctoral researchers coming through, having very different profiles, undertaking projects that have a real world life impact. Now, moving on to this year's projects, we have currently open advertisement for 8. The main point I need to address here is that you can apply to as many projects as you like. So you can apply to multiple projects in this competition. And my suggestion is that you draft your statements in a way that allows you to, on the one hand, have a generic information which is relevant to some projects, whilst at the same time you will be able to modify and tailor that information to each and every project. So you could, for example, find projects that might have similarities here, and you can have a good fit to more than one project. And I have seen cases in the past where doctoral researchers have been shortlisted actually from the supervisory teams for more than one project. Excuse me. If you are successful in securing an interview, and if you are successful in being offered a place, one of those studentships, we will be asking you, of course, at that stage to select which one you would like to undertake. So you can't take more than one project. You can apply for more than one project, and you can be shortlisted for more than one project. So, if we feel that there is a particular strong candidate that might be relevant for more than one project, we will be shortlisting them. And the teams and the supervisory teams that are doing the shortlisting, and I'll come back to that in a minute, they shortlist in an independent way. So there's not a pool of candidates. It's an application on a project by project basis. So the first kind of proposal is around learning beyond the label, enhancing classroom identification and support for children's well-being. This is a University of East Anglia proposal, and it's in partnership with Cambridgeshire Community and Norfolk Community Health and Care. It's a NHS trust, as well as the Moore House School, which means that you will have access directly to school children. It's being supervised by Professor Johnny Holmes, and it's within the health well-being. The second project is around changing landscape of workplace rights for workers with caring responsibilities. It's hosted at the University of Essex. It's being delivered by the University of Essex, Ian Roper as the primary supervisor, and Working Families, which is a charity, as a collaborative partner. The third project is around youth trust and transformation, the long-term impact of police-led support for net young people in Barbados. This is a very interesting project in partnership with the King's Trust International, demonstrating the very, very international agenda of the King's Trust. It's at the University of East Anglia based. It does contain elements of fieldwork in Barbados, and therefore applicants for this project should be expected to travel over there. The next one is by Professor Victoria Baird and People's Palace Projects and Reads Damare in Brazil, understanding the impact of place-based interventions to mitigate climate change on the mental health and well-being of young people in 2 deprived coastal communities, looking at comparative study across the UK and Brazil. And there are 4 more projects. The next one's again at the University of East Anglia, Birgit Larsson, Feathers Futures, and Office of the Police and Crime Commission of Norfolk, Heat and Violence Against Girls and Women in the UK, Potential Impacts of Climate Change and Critical Analysis of Adaptation. Project 6 is From Cats to Kitchen, Learning from Recreational Anglers to Diversify UK Seafood Choices, University of East Anglia. More Than Sleep's the Eye, the Role of REM Sleep and Eye Movements on the Trajectory of Distressing Memories. Again here, University of Essex with Somnomedics, a corporate here that will provide all the relevant training and all the relevant material for the project. And the final one is a very timely one on the impact of generative AI on gender pay gap in the creative media industries. It's at the University of Roehampton with the Fawcett Society. So just to give you a sense of, what we're looking at and what kind of the challenges. The project that I mentioned around the University of East Anglia with Professor Rosalind Bark, From Cats to Kitchen, Learning from Recreational Anglers, Diversify UK Seafood Choices. It's a project that looks at, seafood and the overfishing of seafood. If you look at the UK exports, it exports most of its local seafood. The domestic consumption relies on the imported big fish species. So effectively what happens here is you've got a UK fishing sector which fishes in the UK waters and exports most of that, whilst at the same time, when you want to feed British people, you import almost 80% of what is consumed here. So you've got this very interesting kind of conflict where you've got at the same time a big industry that fishes in the UK and exports that, whilst at the same time when you want to consume something, the UK is mostly imported. So what we're trying to do, what the project is trying to do, is trying to address that imbalance, and trying to see whether there is some form of ocean literacy and how to design intervention to diversify UK seafood diets so we can actually consume what is actually fished in the UK instead of actually import that. And that will make things far more sustainable because obviously you stop having that trade. This is a very quantitative project. We expect the student to do advanced statistical analysis of secondary data sets, which will be provided by the partner, and then surveys and campus-based intervention testings. So a very interesting from a sustainability and climate emergency project. The second one is this cross-collaborative project on UK and Brazil with the title Understanding Place-Based Climate Adaptation Impact on Youth Mental Health in Deprived Coastal Communities. It's by Professor Victoria Baird at University of Essex. And here, the challenge is we look at high rates of climate anxiety among young people. And especially when you look at economically deprived or informal settlements, those rates go even further up. And what we're trying to do is, to identify community-led initiatives that can strengthen the mental health resilience of people. It's a very interesting project in the sense that it has a very interdisciplinary mixed methods approach. We have on one hand arts-based participatory workshops, and at the same time quantitative analysis of national data sets like Understanding Society, which is a big data set that is being hosted at the University of Essex. So the person here will learn multiple skills in terms of data analysis. The last example I want to give is this gender pay gaps and generative AI. I thought this was going to be a very interesting one, where the project is trying to assess pay equity in the UK creative media industries. Again, here, start with a challenge, looking at the UK gender gap, which is 11.3, and we're trying to address, what are the implications for that pay gap once you start looking at generative AI adoption, whether there will be further structural inequalities, gendered access to training, and what the project is trying to do is develop a framework for monitoring how Gen AI impacts work practices and pay discrepancies. So here, again, a project with significant policy implications. And again, a very interesting methodological approach with mixed methods, quantitative survey, AI use of diaries, semi-structured interviews, document analysis. So you will have training that will equip you to undertake, several mixed methods. And that is actually for me quite crucial because you're expanding your research capabilities horizon through projects like these ones. And you are then able to kind of target several different jobs once you complete your thesis. So in terms of the practicalities, 3 stages to making a SENSS application. Ideally, we would like you to discuss your application with the project supervisor. I appreciate that at the moment, supervisors are actually quite busy, and you might not necessarily get a response. There are projects that currently have, in excess of 50 applications, so those supervisors are probably busier than others. And therefore, if you don't manage in the end to discuss your potential application, that's absolutely fine. There is enough information on the website, on the proposal, to help you shape your applications. It's really important to complete your own application to apply for SENSS studentships. We don't expect and accept any other forms. Every application has to be submitted through our HEI Apply platform. And on the website, there is a lengthy document describing exactly what we need from you in each and every section of your application. So please view, read the guidance we're offering. It's quite important. And as I said, there is no limit on the number of supervisor-led studentships you can make, provided that you have the requirements for each one of those. Now, some useful information that you could take into consideration. First of all, there is no need to have a master's. We do decide on the length and the structure of your studentship upon your application. Usually that is something that we might explore a bit more during the interview. You could actually do your studentship on a full-time or part-time basis. The minimum requirement for a part-time is a 50%, but in collaboration with the partner and the supervisor, you could decide whether you want to do it at a part-time basis. And we will be awarding you anything between 3.5 and 4.5 years, depending, of course, on your needs around training. So, if you come, just to give you one example here, if you come straight from an undergraduate degree with minimum research training, we might probably give you a 4.5 years, so you can undertake a full master's, which is going to be fully paid. In terms of fees, you will get your stipend and everything like that. So your funding will be extended to 4.5 years. If, of course, you have, a very strong kind of research methods background, then there is no point for you to undertake a full master's. You might need some additional time to undertake specific training on skills, and therefore we might give you, 3.5, 3.75, depends. That will depend on it's a consultation process between yourselves, the supervisory team, and us. One thing which is quite important to note here is whatever length we give you, we would expect you to submit your thesis within that period. So these projects don't come with any additional time as a write-up year as we had in the past. So the expectation is that you will be completing and submitting your PhD within the period awarded. Deadline for applications, 12 o'clock, noon, Greenwich Mean Time, Monday, 16th of February. You need to calculate, if you're applying from abroad, you need to calculate what that means for your time zone, but it's not 12 o'clock your individual time zone, it's 12 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time on Monday, the 16th of February. So I have had cases in the past where applicants have missed the application deadline for a couple of hours just because they thought, it is 12 o'clock noon time, their home time zone. And it's not. Please ensure that you submit by Greenwich Mean Time, 12 o'clock. And in most cases, we would expect you to do this application. We would expect you to go through the process and then apply to that home institution for a PhD space once you have your application. And if you are shortlisted, the project supervisor will extend an invitation to attend an interview. At the moment, we expect those interviews to start the week commencing on the 9th of March. So we try to give you at least a week's notice between the invitation and between the invitation to the interview and the actual interview date. There are 4 criteria that we use and the supervisors will be using to assess your application. The first one is, sorry, I meant 3 criteria. The first one is your fit for this research project. So what we would expect to see there is we would expect you to discuss, why you want to undertake this project. It might be because you have lived experiences of these challenges. It might be because your career aspirations are to work with an organization like that. It might be because your general interest is in that area. Then we would expect you to tell us a bit about your preparedness. What are the skills you already possess in fulfilling the requirements of this project, and have you got any experience in collaborative projects? People here ask me, what kind of experience? So for example, let's think someone that has volunteered in their undergraduate studies in an organization, and they work with events, they work with things like that. That is an example you could actually use to strengthen your application in terms of the collaborative context. Some people come from an industry background or from a policy background, returning back to academia and returning back to the academic world. Again, they can use that as experience in collaborative projects. And then what we want you to think about your project and think about yourselves and tell us what are your needs. What is that you feel you need to develop in order to successfully deliver this project. So it's almost like doing a gap analysis. If a project, for example, requires substantial quantitative skills, but you haven't got training in quantitative skills, tell us about that. We would like to almost get a sense of your self-awareness of your weaknesses in this part of the application. So, do you have the basic background in the relevant discipline? What are your interests and experiences? It's the evidence you need to provide on your suitability. Achievement, progression, potential in studies to date, relevant experience within or extracurricular, looks at the preparedness. Bear in mind that for the SENSS application, we don't require reference letters, we don't require transcripts, we don't require anything like that. So all the information you need to give us should be within that application form. And then, of course, looking at the collaborative partner, look at the placement, look at what you could contribute to their agenda. Just to give you again an example here, one of the key questions we ask during interviews is what do you know about the collaborative partner? What can you contribute to the agenda of the collaborative partner? And you will be surprised the amount of times people come unprepared, not having checked the website of the collaborative partner, not having looked at what the collaborative partner is offering, and everything like that. So do that homework even for the application, where you look at who the collaborative partner is, what are they offering, how you could contribute to their agenda, what is their mission, what is their vision, and how far that mission and vision aligns to your aspirations. Once you submit your application, 16th of February, 12 o'clock noon, Greenwich Mean Time, the supervisory team will access those applications. We ask the two supervisors, academic supervisors, and the supervisor from the collaborative partner to evaluate applications and then shortlist up to 4 applicants to attend an interview. We usually, excuse me, we usually hold those interviews virtually. There have been some cases where we have them hybrid, but predominantly we do it virtually in order to be able to allow international applicants to submit applications and get access to interviews. We have most of the interviews on a single project on the same day, and we try to make decisions about who to recommend for the management board, which is the next stage. I will be attending and be part of the panel for all interviews. The reason we do that is because at the end of the day, I need to write a report to the management board on the quality of candidates, as well as ensure that there is parity across the different projects in the selection process. So I act as, both a participant as well as an auditor for the process. And for each proposal, we shortlist one preferred and one reserve candidate. So what will happen is shortly after the interview, the supervisor will let you know whether they are nominating you as their preferred or reserve candidate. And that nomination goes to the management board, which meets in April. This year, the management board meets on the 1st of April, and the management board formally agrees who should receive the awards. And at that point, we issue a formal offer letter for you, that if you're especially international candidate, you can start, the whole process around visa requirements and everything like that. And the expectation is that you will be starting the project in October 2026, and we will have an induction for you that will make you part of SENSS. So that's the whole process. Occasionally, because I get to attend all interviews, if I feel that there are strong candidates across proposals or across projects that might not have considered applying for another project, and that project didn't manage to recruit, I look at the pool of candidates that we've interviewed, and I can suggest to supervisors and applicants to meet and discuss potential applications to other projects as well. But that's only if we don't manage to recruit for a project, which has been the case in the past. Last year, for example, where there was one project that wasn't recruiting well, and what we did is we identified an excellent candidate from another project who was shortlisted but wasn't offered, and that candidate was then transferred to that project, had a discussion with the supervisory team and an informal interview, and they were offered the studentship. That's all I had from my side in terms of the collaborative projects competition. It's really important to, in your application, to have a self-reflective element, in the sense that it's not only the academic qualifications that matter in this competition, it's also your lived experiences, it's also your motivations, it's also your alignment with what the project stands for and why you would like to undertake this particular project. Is about your career aspirations, is about your transitioning perhaps from an industrial role to an academic role and vice versa. So it's about convincing the supervisory team about why you are the best person to undertake that proposal and fulfill that proposal. And obviously, throughout the process, you will also be evaluated by the collaborative partner. And therefore, you need to be able to speak to that collaborative partner as well. I'll pause here and see whether there are any kind of questions from participants. As I said, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. The question is there just one PhD studentship available per SENSS Collaborative project, and how competitive are these generally? So the answer is yes, there is one studentship attached to each of those collaborative projects, 8 in total. They are generally competitive in the sense that not all projects obviously are equally popular. So if I'm looking at this year's application without mentioning which project is which, there is currently one project which has roughly 80 profiles created, but so far about 25 applications submitted. Some of those profiles might actually convert to applications. So there is one project, and that's our top project in terms of applications, which has already 20 applications, and there is more than a week to the deadline, so we expect that number to go up. The minimum number of applications we have for a project right now is 5. So even in that case, there will still be some form of shortlisting. Obviously, you would expect more specialist type of and projects that require more advanced skills to have fewer applications than others. But they are generally competitive. They're not as competitive as the student-led competition, of course, where you submit your own applications, and that it's a very competitive process, because this year we had just under 500 applications in total for about 30 students. Does it matter if we repeat ourselves in the application, as the question asks for examples, but they're also covered in the personal statement? No, that's absolutely fine, as long as you provide the relevant responses to those questions. And I appreciate that there is a limited number of examples someone can give, especially if they don't have hundreds and hundreds of roles in their past experience. If they're coming straight from an undergraduate degree, the number of examples you could use will be relatively limited, so there will be some replication. It's just always what is quite important is to think about the example in the context of the question that you're being asked. If I applied for the STEM student-led competition as well, can I also apply for this collaborative one? The answer is yes. There is no limitation. You can apply for the student-led, and you can apply for this competition as well. And as I said, you can apply for as many projects as you feel they are relevant for your profile. Especially, if you look at projects which are adjusted in terms of, the theme. There are several in the health, well-being, and social care that might touch on psychology, that might touch on these areas. And if you come from a psychology background, of course, you can apply to several collaborative projects. I'm just giving it a few more minutes if anybody has any questions that they would like to put. As I said, on the website, we have very detailed guidance on this competition. My advice is draft your responses to a Word file and then copy paste them onto the HI Apply. This is an online system. Sometimes there are issues with online systems, online applications. Don't waste your effort putting directly onto the system, try to put it on a Word file, follow the guidance we have in the relevant guidance document in terms of what is required in each section, and then copy paste that response to those questions. The personal statement question asks to reflect on any equality, diversity, and inclusivity issues you have dealt with, potentially overcome, or continue to face. It's about giving applicants with widening participation or protected characteristics the opportunity to reflect. Just to give you one example, in the past we had someone who had lived most of the childhood in care and care environments. They undertook a project that was related to the effectiveness of care facilities, and we, in their personal statement, they were able to articulate how that lived experience or how the challenges they faced coming from that background would make them the right candidate for that proposal. So for example, these are cases you could use. So if you have lived experiences, if you have protected characteristics, if you come from, someone might, just to give you an example relevant to these projects, you have this proposal on deprived communities, coastal communities. If you have lived or you're currently living in an environment like that, and you have lived experiences of the deprivation and the impact of that deprivation, you could actually articulate around that in your personal statement. How do I know my training needs? Are there any courses offered? Now, we don't ask you here to tell us what courses you will need. We ask you to reflect. So the questions on the application form ask you to tell us what is your existing training. And what we expect you there to do is look at your existing training, look at the project requirements, and see whether you have any gaps. So for example, someone that has done significant research methods training, but they don't have, for example, advanced survey analysis, and they will like to undertake the project around fishing, which does require survey analysis, that is a training need that individual will have to address. So what we expect you there to do is to reflect on what kind of skills you currently have through your education, through your professional experience, through your lived experiences, and reflect on the gaps that you potentially have. We don't expect you at this stage to tell us, and I will be covering that gap by undertaking this particular workshop, because we can't do that. But we expect you to tell us the generic skills that you are actually missing. If someone wants to have a good reflection, my suggestion is to have a look at an organization called Vitae. It's VITAE, Vitae, and they have a very interesting framework called the Researcher Development Framework. We built our development needs analysis ourselves as SENSS on that. You could look at that organization, and you could look at the skills that you're missing through the framework they are currently offering. Good afternoon. I also watched recording of last time webinar presentation is restricted to share proposal information. If I have some idea about the project, am I allowed to ask which part supervisor may be more interested so I can give more contents in the application form? The answer is yes. You could ask the supervisor to share information. What we have asked supervisors is not to share directly with applicants the proposal, because they won't be able to do that with everyone. They might fail to do that with everyone, and therefore we create an uneven playing field. But also what is crucial, and I know that because I have sight of all the proposals. As I said, I chair the evaluation panel. When we evaluate proposals, we also ask ourselves the question, does this proposal allow the student, the applicant, enough space to make it their own. So if you have ideas around potential changes, potential ways of improvement, potential ways of bringing that proposal closer to your research skills, that's absolutely fine. A, to discuss them with the supervisor, B, to potentially put them in the application. And usually what I say is you need to make your application stand out. And this is a very interesting way by demonstrating that you have thought about the proposal, you have thought about your skills, and you have thought about how to make that proposal best fit with your skills. So the answer is yes, you could ask, engage with the supervisor. You could also look at the proposal, with the brief information it's currently is there, looking at the collaborative partner and shape it, make recommendations about your contribution to that. I'm a UK citizen with a UK passport and address, but I'm currently living between UK and an EU country. This may or may not change if I started a PhD. What makes me consider a home student or overseas? So at the moment, you would be considered a home student. One of the things, though, I need to stress here is that there is a residency requirement for the studentship. So in order to receive the studentship, with the exception of the time where there needs to be a field work, so the project that is comparing UK and Brazil will have an element of field work taking place in Brazil. With the exception of that, and with the exception of an overseas institutional visit, that it's a separate application you will make once you get into the SENSS community. The residency requirement is that the person that undertakes the studentship and is awarded studentship is a permanent UK resident. So you would need to think about that, how that will work over the next 3.5 years. But at the moment, the way you describe yourself, you are a home student, which means that you can be awarded the studentship on that basis, but there is going to be a residency requirement should you be successful to reside in the UK for the duration of the project. Can you expand on the purpose of learning beyond label, enhancing classroom identification support for children's well-being? Yes, if you give me a few more seconds, I'll come back to this question once I can open the proposal. I need to refresh my memory on that proposal, so I'll keep this question open. In the equal opportunities form, the question: do you consider yourself to have significant long-term caring responsibilities? Does it consider taking care of an old child? Yes, it is caring responsibilities. Parents do. We do consider them having caring responsibilities. So the answer there is yes. I'm interested in the topic called understanding the impact of place-based interventions to mitigate climate change on the mental health and well-being of young people in two deprived countries. How do I know the specific PhD program to apply in the Essex University? Will a PhD in public health be a good fit? We don't ask you to apply at this point. That's something I think the PhD in public health will be effectively the program we will ask you to register. But at this point, what usually happens is we ask you to apply for the SENSS studentship. Then, should you be successful, to apply in collaboration with the supervisor to apply for the PhD place. We do that to avoid wasting everyone's time, including, of course, the administrative teams in the different universities. Imagine a project that has 80 applications so far, and that project basically is one that attracts quite a lot of interest. In this case, what we want to avoid is having 80 people applying for that proposal, because it doesn't make any difference. Not all of them will effectively receive an offer. So we only ask people that have received or have gone through the process, have been shortlisted, to apply. The equal opportunities form must be sent before the rest of the application form. No, it's usually when you submit the application form, there is a task being created for you to submit the Equal Opportunities Form. And just to give you a sense, the Equal Opportunities Form, it's something that we utilize to effectively ensure that we do provide opportunities for people coming from, protected characteristics. So effectively what we do on an annual basis is we create a report, and that report effectively is informing our decision-making process for the EDI kind of strategy that we have. Are international students who succeed in getting the scholarship allowed to move to UK with their families? Very interesting question. So far, and UK immigration policy is like moving sand at the moment. So far, doctoral researchers are allowed, if my memory of the UK immigration is correct, are allowed to bring their families, and that's the only group that actually is allowed to bring their families. I don't know, and because we are faced with an environment that constantly changes, I don't know which immigration policies will be relevant once the applications are closed and once we make the offers. So, so far the answer is yes, but that could very well change between now and October 2026 when you will be here. I'm sorry, I can't give a more kind of direct, concrete response to that. If we're not shortlisted, will we hear, or is it no news means that we haven't been shortlisted? No, we expect the supervisory teams to give us, to inform candidates that they haven't been shortlisted and give them very brief feedback. That brief feedback might be just a couple of lines on their application. So you will hear. Obviously, if you haven't heard by the 2nd or 3rd of March, so 2 weeks post the competition closing date, it's most likely that you haven't been shortlisted, but you will hear, with a decline and some very brief feedback from the supervisory team. We try to do that for all proposals that are being submitted. I'm already in the UK on a dependent visa, so do I need to switch to student visa if I'm successful? The answer is yes. You will probably have to apply for a switch in your visa status because you will become a doctoral researcher, and the university you will be registered with is going to be your sponsor for that visa. Now, let me see whether I can pick up the question on learning beyond a label. I'll stop sharing for a minute my screen just to make sure that I can basically go back and find a bit more. So this is the Johnny Holmes project. Let me just very quickly open the proposal. And if you give me a minute, I'll just be able to say a few more about this proposal. Just bear in mind that this project is actually one of our most popular ones in terms of applications. And therefore, it has already, I think it's probably, if I'm not mistaken, it is probably the top project. So here, what we're trying to do in terms of the challenge, it's looking at the socio-emotional functioning issues like anxiety, regulation, and how those predict school disengagement. And obviously, in order to support people, we would need to have some formal diagnosis, and that leads occasionally to long waiting lists and inequality. So, how quickly you will get diagnosed is how quickly you will get support, and how quickly you will get support means that you will get less school disengagement. So I think here what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a practical classroom mapping tool for 8 to 11-year-olds to help teachers identifying needs and implement some form of evidence-based strategies without the need to have a formal diagnosis. So it's almost like going a step before the formal diagnosis and help school teachers who basically see and observe student pupil behavior on a daily basis, the ability to do that informal diagnosis and make interventions. It is a mixed methods project. There is a systematic review, secondary analysis of large data sets, and also workshops with teachers and clinicians. It is, as I said, more of a psychology project, and it is with two collaborative partners, the Moore House School and Cambridgeshire Norfolk NHS Trust. So the placement in that proposed project will be both at the Moore House School as well as the NHS. And the important thing here is when you have always, NHS trusts involved, you could get access to excellent kind of data. So that's something really, really important. So that's the information I can give you on this project. Next question is regarding the application forms research question section. Approximately 10,000 characters, 2,000 words are available for response. I would like to inquire whether a comprehensive description is required or if there's a specified minimum word count that needs to be met. No, there is no minimum word count. Equally, think about your ability to communicate things effectively in a confined way. The supervisory teams have to review all applications. They have to make shortlisting decisions. So if your application stands out in the way it communicates, that's something quite important as well. So think about how you could communicate that. So there is no minimum word count, but equally try to not, don't have the need to fill the space, put it this way. I'll give it a few more seconds, and if there are no more open questions, I'll bring the webinar to a close. And as I said, we will be posting the webinar on the website shortly after we finish. Usually in the next day, the webinar is available on the website. I particularly invite you to read the guidance which is on the website. Is quite important. It's very detailed. We have spent quite a lot of time putting that guidance together. It gives you important information on what you need to fill in the different section of the applications, and please use the Word or Google Docs to draft the application before you copy paste that onto the website. I've got someone who has raised their hand, so I'll take that question as well. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Melchizedek Muka from Kenya. I do have a question on a student-led competition.
Okay.
Now, I tried to. I have a pre-developed proposal that I'm interested in pursuing, but I was trying to look for a supervisor from the listed universities, but I got some responses that some of the programs are not part of the SENSS program. I would like to know which specific program are a part of the SENSS program. I was a bit confused on that.
It depends on whether the university, so there is on the website, the universities tell you in which themes they participate and whether those themes are part of SENSS. So the most appropriate person to answer that, because I don't remember by heart, which are the specific PhDs, is the operational lead at each institution, and the details are available. I suspect what might have happened here is you might have tried to apply for STEM subjects or creative arts subjects, and these are directly outside of the scope of SENSS, because SENSS only funds social sciences projects. So the SRC regulations ask us to evaluate whether a proposal fits within social sciences. And if the proposal doesn't, so let's say something which related, which could be funded by the EPSRC, which is the Science Funding Council, or the MRC, which is the Medical Research Council, or the NERC, which is the Natural Environment Research Council, wouldn't fit necessarily under SENSS, and therefore, your application to those areas wouldn't fit to a SENSS project. But if you could email me, which have been those cases where people told you that this is not part of SENSS, I can confirm or not confirm by looking at our data and the list of the programs we have under our archives. Have I answered your question? So there is one more question.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe I need to share about my topic, maybe for guidance. My topic is on mental health. I don't know whether that could fall under SENSS, because I am interested in doing a study on mental health of offenders and their families, whereby I want to test a new intervention. Actually, this intervention was developed in the UK called Engager, and I'm trying to adapt this intervention specifically on the probationers and their families. So I'm not sure whether this falls under social sciences or.
This is probably what you're describing is probably more closer to a medical research council funded proposal, and this is why you probably might not have found a space in one of the universities. It's always a very thin line that we need to ensure that we don't cross. And if so far the partner institutions told you that the projects or the proposals or the areas you're trying to apply to are outside of SENSS, then I'll take what the partners have said. Remember, SENSS, and I need to make that crucial distinction here, SENSS is responsible for providing you with funding. We're not responsible for awarding the PhD. Your PhD is awarded through one of the 8 partner institutions. So we rely on the partner institutions to tell us whether they would be prepared to accept you for a PhD and whether that PhD program fits within SENSS. If it does fit within SENSS, then we can look at the application with regards to its merits and the potential it has for funding. But if the partner institution feels that the application does not fit within the SENSS remit and therefore social sciences remit, then there's nothing else we can do from our side, because we don't control the academic element of your application. That is relying with with the partner institution that is awarding the PhD. Right. I'll take the final question from the Q&A. the question is, how closely will the PhD student work with practitioners in school and NHS student services during the placement? The answer is very close. The placement is effectively 3 months that you will be embedded in the partner organization. So in the case of NHS Trust, you will be working in that organization. The way the placement is structured is something that the supervisory team has some idea, but it's also something that you can discuss should you be successful. We don't expect you to undertake the placement in the first 6 months anyway of your PhD. We expect you to undertake the placement after the first 6 months, and that's to give you time to think about the placement, think about the needs of the project and everything like that. So the placement can be either a block of 3 months or it could be spread throughout the PhD. What we try to do is we try to allow flexibility there for the doctoral researcher, the supervisory team, and the collaborative partner to design the placement in the best way possible for that particular project. Right, I can see there are no further open questions. I'd like to thank you for your time, for attending the webinar. As I said, the recording of the webinar will be available shortly after we finish on the website. Please revisit should you have any questions. If there are any admin related questions, please post them to admin@sensedtp.ac.uk. The team is there. This is the email that we keep monitoring as a team, and therefore it will find its way to the most appropriate person amongst us. Of course, try to engage with supervisors. Please appreciate that some of them might be very busy already trying to address questions from other candidates. And don't forget the deadline for the applications, which is on 16th of February, Monday the 16th of February at 12 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. So make sure that you keep that in mind once you draft your application and you're aiming for submission. Good luck. I hope to see some of you during the interview stage and meet you in person when it comes to our induction in October 2026 next year. Good luck with your applications and thank you very much.